signora Dereli, quindi per la Turchia. Allora, per presentarla vorrei sottolineare soprattutto, come è stato indicato nei documenti che vi sono stati distribuiti, il ruolo che la signora svolge come membro fondatore della Glow Communication a Istanbul e in particolare questa sua iniziativa sul dialogo, rispetto e comprensione reciproca attraverso la musica. Sappiamo tuttavia però che la signora è molto attiva anche come direttrice nel Black Sea Energy and Economic Forum e sono sicura che parlandoci della Turchia, un paese in grande espansione, di grande forza e vitalità proprio in questi ultimi anni e probabilmente anche nel futuro, ci potrà permettere di capire qual è il ruolo anche di un paese come la Turchia, la sua esperienza attuale, come possibile, tra virgolette, modello, uno dei modelli che possono diventare vincenti nell'ambito euro-mediterraneo. Prego, signora.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Bergamini and all the conference organizers for this wonderful group of people from all different parts of the region, but also men and women alike, because I think when we're talking about gender equality issues, we really have to have men with us. And I actually have another job. I actually am a TV programmer and a presenter, so please bear in mind that I actually get paid to talk, so it's sometimes difficult for me to stop talking. But remind me that this is not a show and I'm not getting paid to talk here, but I would actually also like asking questions. So why are we even talking about gender equality? Why is it important? Why should men care? Why should anybody care? You know why they should care? They should care because actually improving women's status in countries, it improves the status of living for everybody, not only for women, but for everyone. Because we're actually living in the post-industrial world. It's the new technology world. And what do we need for this world? What do we need to be successful in this world as nations, as human beings? We need human capital. And human capital, it's not, we all know that it's actually not attained only in universities, not only in job training, but we actually do it, especially the most important part of it is probably when the children are being raised within the families. And studies show that actually when we have female empowerment, most of the issues that are stereotypically women's issues when it comes to these types of jobs, which is raising children, caring for the elderly, healthcare, all of these things that are very, very important, actually get more fiscal support from governments. What does that lead to? With more fiscal support, you actually have better raised children for the next generation. So I think this is what we need to be focusing on. Why should we be caring about all of this? If we can discuss why this is important, then we can all come together and come to potentially better situation than what we are in right now. Since the morning, we've been talking about how to attain what we're talking about, but why to attain it is also, I think, a critical threshold in most people's minds. And also, for example, I remember in 2006, I don't know if any of you remember this, but the Economist had a headline on the cover page, and it said, forget India and China, and forget the internet, women are actually the drivers behind economic change. And this is a very important, very, very important issue, that women, by closing the gender gap, even in countries like the US, Europe, and Japan, we would be able to increase the GDP by 10%. So we're actually going through a really difficult time. We're wondering if it's a double dip, repression, depression. How are we going to cope with it? How kind of fiscal measurements can we take to make sure that we can lower the debt levels? Everybody in Turkey is wondering if the European Union is going to survive. I'm sure you guys are probably questioning that yourselves, but we're really hopeful that it will anyway. And that maybe one day we will become a part of the European Union. Let's see. We'll talk about that on a different conference, but I think the most important is that within this economic downturn that we're in, we really need to make sure that we employ female capital and that we bring this GDP that is actually at the moment unaccounted for, because even now, women account for 40%, 41% of world's GDP. If we include all of the jobs that I described previously, like caring for the children, taking care of the household, if we were to include this in the GDP, make it formal, they will be at the moment contributing to 51% of the GDP. And we have a huge gender gap in general. So think about it. We make women take part in the workforce. What kind of percentage increase would we have in the GDP? So it would be actually a win-win situation for everybody. And when we're talking about the social aspects of women's empowerment, and what does that mean? I think, you know what, the most important thing is what we're dealing with these days, especially after 9/11, is terrorism. And terrorism is, in a way, there is a direct correlation between violence against women within the household and a tendency for terrorism, because this is the first time that people, children, learn that this is the way that you assert your power over somebody. And if we can actually fight against violence for women, we probably will be going a really long way ahead in terms of finding a solution to terrorism. So, you know, these are the things that I think are very, very important. You know, in Turkey, the way we look at it is it's not religious. It's, at least the way I look at it, none of this is religious. We shouldn't be talking about it in a religious context. We should be talking about how we can make it work for all of us. And the way to make it work for all of us is actually by realizing that we will all gain from this, by empowering women, by including them in the workforce, by actually not only, we don't need to even include them in the workforce in the sense of the word, but if we can find a way of actually accounting for the work that they do, because it's really valuable work. It's probably one of the most valuable work that that's done. And this is what we need to do. So change our mindsets, change all of our mindsets, and look at it from a different perspective. So in a way, to sum up, what I want to say is, you know, we live in a new world. In this new world, it's very fast-paced. We're doing a lot of things. We, as women, all of us here, you know, we've gone through tough times, right? It's not easy being here. It wasn't easy. It's not easy to stay here either. And most of the time, we're actually not helping each other out that much either. We need to make sure that we are not fighting against one another. We're just trying to create a new cake. I'm not even talking about making the cake bigger, but create a new cake. Look at the cake from a different perspective. Create a new recipe and work on that. And I'm sure we can do that. So I'm hopeful, just like Mr. D'Antoni, that we will be able to do that. Thank you.